Let's get right to the big story of the week. Fire tore through Notre Dame's Cathedral in Paris, France, and the country is focusing on reconstruction, with President Emmanuel Macron setting a goal of rebuilding the Gothic landmark within 5 years. Donations are pouring in from all over the world. On Wednesday, President Trump announced via Twitter that he had spoken to Pope Francis, offering him his condolences and assistance to rebuild the cathedral. He also tweeted, "I offered the help of our great experts on renovation and construction, as I did in my conversation yesterday with President Emmanuel Macron of France. I also wished both Pope Francis and President Macron a very happy Easter." Nearly $1 billion has already been raised to rebuild Notre Dame, with France's 3 richest families pledging $565 million. Here to talk about the cultural and spiritual significance of that ancient house of worship, I'm joined by art historian and author of How Catholic Art Saved the Faith, Dr. Liz Lev from Rome, and here in studio, Father Pierre-Henri. He's the pastor of St. Louis of France Catholic Church in Washington. Thank you both for being here. Father, what do you think as you saw those flames going up on this unbelievable cathedral, so beautiful and means so much to so many? Give us a sense of the significance of Notre Dame to the people of France and the country that has become so secular and multicultural in many ways.
Well, I would say it's so surprising. At first, I thought it was just a small fire, whereas you can have some. And then as time was going, I was so impressed and say, oh gosh, when you know that is a full forest that was needed to build this full roof.
Yeah. 53 acres worth
yes.
for ancient, for 800-year-old timber up there.
And it was built, and French people consider that it's their cathedral, even though maybe they don't practice, even though they're in a Catholic culture. But it's really a spiritual center, of course, for the Diocese of Paris, from which I am, but even from a lot of French people around. Notre Dame de Paris is Notre Dame de Paris as a spiritual center, as a cultural center, and that's from this cathedral that all the roads, the kilometers are counted starting from Notre Dame. So it's a huge symbol for French people. And so I would say it was so impressive because I was ordained over there, so I just lie down in the cathedral, and so you say, oh gosh, it's burning, and it's burning on the Holy Friday too.
Yeah.
And I was looking as the fire was going more and more, seeing how the French people would gather more and more around in Paris, of course, but it was really an affair, really something strong. And I was, by looking all these images, I was thinking about the Gospel of Palm Sunday, where Jesus says he's been criticized by his disciples are criticized because they are just acclaiming him in Jerusalem. And Jesus says, if they don't acclaim, then the rocks will cry.
Cry out, yeah.
Yes. And I would say, seeing that, I was impressed because it looked like it was what was happening. French people, maybe we are Catholic, a lot of them are Catholic, but with the French Revolution, I would say the French people had a hard time to get into a real profound, true way of Catholic life. And suddenly you had everybody that would raise up and say, hey, that's our cathedral. Yeah. Hey, we're at home. Hey, our house is burning. Yeah. And that's what impressed me when Tuesday morning, people say, okay, I want to give money to rebuild. We need to rebuild. That's what the president of France said at night.
Father and Liz, I had a friend who's a secular Parisian who called me and said, I felt like my heart was being ripped out. Now, this is someone who doesn't go to church, doesn't practice the faith. He said, I felt like my heart was getting ripped out watching this. And he said, you don't realize or think about your heart until it's gone. Liz, from the perspective of an art historian, this cathedral, it took 200 years to complete, beginning in 1163. It survived wars and vandalization, the Huguenots, rebuilding, renovations. What have we lost here?
Well, The church has actually survived so much that what we've really done, and I suppose in a certain sense, is we're getting ready to add another chapter to its history. Yes, we've lost the spire. Yes, we've lost the roof. Yes, some of the interior of the church is damaged, but the church will be rebuilt as it was rebuilt in 1861 by Viollet-le-Duc, as it had to be repaired already under Louis XIV. It's part of the beauty of this church, I think, is its endurance. And how many times has there been this exodus of the French from the faith? If it's not the Huguenots, then it was when it became the Temple of Reason, and then the back and forth between the secular state and the Christian state. It's fascinating to see how the people of this cathedral, they make this exodus, but then they return, and they return in times of suffering.
Yeah, it becomes a magnifying event, a clarifying event. Now, all week, commentators have mentioned the artistic value of Notre Dame, Liz, but is it reductive to refer to it and consider it simply as a great artistic and architectural masterpiece?
I've been listening to this all week, and I realize that as Catholics, we get upset when people see it as just a building. But I think we have to look at it from the perspective of people who are trying to hold on to they're embracing their secularism, and yet they still love this building, and they have to put it into some kind of context. What is attracting people to this building? What makes this building so fascinating? It's that it's beautiful, and that it's beautiful, and it's the result of people giving their lives in a certain very, very specific type of humility. Think of the people who started work on that church, 200 years to build, right? You start work and you know you're not going to see it done, but you have a faith that the next generation is going to bring it on, and the next generation is going to continue, and that the next generations are going to keep that church going into the future. So I think what even though maybe they can't bring themselves to say that oh, it's a great church, they are responding to two things: a universal love of beauty, and also that faith that built that church and rebuilt it and rebuilt it and rebuilt it again. So we don't have to make them say it. Their pure love and expressions are really making it kind of clear.
Yeah, well, and Liz, as you've pointed out over so many years here, and I know you took my friend Monsignor Nolte through Notre Dame not long ago, and we were just talking about it the other night, and he was commenting, and it reflects exactly what you're saying. He recently renovated his church, and the man who came in to repair the stained glass and renovate them was the great-grandson of the man who installed them. So it's that same kind of faith and craftsmanship that is passed on from generation to generation. Father, I want your reaction to this. Cardinal Raymond Burke had this to say, and he kind of put this devastating fire in a spiritual context. Here's what he said: viewing the ravage of the Cathedral of Notre Dame by yesterday's fire, men and women of faith are led to consider the attacks upon the infinite beauty of the faith by the grievous sins and crimes of our day. Yesterday's event is a sobering reflection upon the destructiveness of man's rebellion against beauty, truth, and goodness. Father, your reaction?
Well, I would say, why not? Is every time you touch its symbols, which is Notre Dame is a reality, but it's a symbol of faith, a symbol of purity, a symbol of a movement toward heaven. You touch to something which is so deep in humankind, and that's what I would think why people react to say we've got to save it. We have as Dr. Lady was speaking about, was showing us is the church by itself is a living corpse, I would say.
Right, yeah, so the stones are living. I mean, as I said on Fox the other day, when you were watching this church and you see it coming down, or the roof coming down, you're watching 800, almost 1,000 years of French belief go up in flames. This is the belief of the French people lived out and externalized in craftsmanship and beauty.
And I was thinking about Jesus to St. Francis saying, rebuild my church. And for me, I think we are at a time where as the Christians, and maybe more as a Catholic Church too, we really have to be engaged personally. As Pope Francis is trying to have the church move out, move on, and rebuild the church and go to the power of faith, the beauty of faith, and spreading out. And I would think this fire, for me, and I think for a lot of people, it touches this aspect, is how are we going to rebuild the church? It's not only rocks, it's not just to show off, it's how are we really going to be living the Christ in this
And Liz, I want to get into that in a moment with you, but I want both of you to consider this question. Father Jean-Marc Fournier is the chaplain of the Paris Fire Brigade. He is being called a hero today for saving not only the Blessed Sacrament, which is really why this house was built, but the crown of thorns, which has been venerated for centuries. It is one of the treasures of Notre Dame. He went in with the firefighters into the cathedral. Father, how important are these relics? And then Liz, I'm going to ask you the same question. How important are these relics to the French people, Father? The crown of thorns, the tunic of the St. Louis of France, the parish you run here in D.C.
Well, I would say that's unique. And since it's been unique, it was the unique first, but it was the crown of Jesus Christ. And always, like relics, it relates us back to God and to Christ himself. And since we're human beings, we really need to touch things. That's how God just gave us the Blessed Sacrament. And for this priest, I got to hear his testimony as how he did it. And it was just amazing. He just said, when I pick up the Blessed Sacrament, I couldn't do nothing else than blessing all this cathedral that was going on fire and say, let God. And what surprised me as I was blessing it, the fire that had started in the towers just started to stop.
Wow.
And so I would, as Christian, I would react and say, yeah, I mean, Jesus is acting in our life if we just call him. But if we don't do it, I mean, what can he do in our lives?
Yeah.
So it's very impressive and maybe a beautiful testimony.
No, it's chilling. It's chilling. And Liz, when you saw the cross there and the whole altar and the beautiful Pieta, that all survived, it made me think of the great Joan of Arc line, you know, hold the cross higher so I can see it through the flames. And there was the cross. But reflect on the cross that we saw and the importance of these relics, historically speaking.
Well, the crown of thorns, I've been to venerate the crown of thorns on several occasions because, I mean, you can. and it's amazing to me how many people I've run into. You run into friends there. Oh, I didn't know you were in Paris. Where are we all? We're all here to venerate the crown of thorns. I look around and there are people from all over. And then there are people who come in and they walk up and they're curious. They're probably not Catholic. They probably don't even know. They're just other people are doing it, but you can feel that magnetism. It's not just something of the French people. That is something, even that circular unity of that relic, it brings us all together. But for me, the testimony or the witness of that chaplain of the firefighters, that witness, when the world saw someone who thought getting the Blessed Sacrament was more important than his own life, that's one of those moments that we need to hold up and show, yes, I believe this. I believe. You run to a burning house to save the most precious thing. Well, the priest showed us the most precious thing in that church. It's an amazing testimony for the whole world.
I agree. Father, I can see you wanting to say something.
Well, I would say, as of course, Blessed Sacrament is a major part of our life, and it's really Christ by himself being with us. And at the same time, as human being, as walking with God in this world, I would say that we need things that we can touch, and especially the Holy Crown is helping us getting more to the deep of what Jesus Christ is living this Holy Week. And as we are going to Holy Friday, as I was saying to my parishioners, and I think that's something we have to accept in our lives, is how we are going to be able to go through Christ accepting this suffering. And we're not looking for suffering, but we need to accept it, and we can only accept it if we just look Christ.
And I mean, this is a crown. We should just tell people this crown of thorns. Saint Helena, the history of this crown. Saint Helena goes to the Holy Land, retrieves it. Constantine gives it to the French king. I mean, this is. You know, it has a long, amazing history, and to have survived the revolution and still be with us, it is truly a treasure. I want to read something to you. Rolling Stone magazine published a piece, and they quoted an art historian, Liz. I'll let you take first crack at this. This is from Rolling Stone. It is from the historian of architecture at Harvard, Patricio del Real, and he says this: the building was so overburdened, Notre Dame, with meaning that its burning feels like an act of liberation. And they go on to say that perhaps whatever is rebuilt should be rebuilt in the image of the French people today, meaning a secular multicultural society. Your reaction to that?
Well, I mean, hey, while we're at it, let's burn down St. Peter's and oh my gosh, that white supremacist Sistine Chapel. I mean, seriously, this person is supposed to teach architecture. He's supposed to teach people to love and produce beauty, and he can't respect the people who made beauty in the past. Seriously, so they're paying Harvard tuitions to be taught this. And of course, the only place we would manage to publish something like that is in Rolling Stone magazine. It's just an indication of how this element of the popular culture, so secularized, it's like they're aliens watching the fire from another planet, and they're unable to see the people kneeling around the church. They seem to be unable to notice all the people, whether they were Jews or Muslims or atheists, or they just didn't really think about religion, glued to the television set, all feeling that same pain. I mean, where is this person actually living? Actually, now that I think about it, isn't Notre Dame built on top of an old pagan temple?
Yes.
So maybe when they go to fix it up, they should seal that back up again, because it sounds like the pagans are popping out through some hole in the floor.
Father, do you want to react to that idea?
Well, I would say, you know, it's very easy to put people, as we say in France, to put people in boxes. And sometimes we do it in everyday life because the life goes easier and faster. But French people, they are deeply Christians, and that's what maybe a lot of people don't get. And I would say I've been arriving in the States for just 5 months, and looking, we could say suddenly, oh, well, all American people are Christian. Well, no, sorry. Of course, maybe some are baptized, a lot go to their congregations. Okay, but do we really live as Christian? And maybe that's the point of this Holy Week, is how are we able to live more and more with it? And this fire in Notre Dame, in sort of a way, can help us to get this up into our lives. Say, okay, how am I each day rebuilding Christ's life in me?
There is a cultural tension in France today. I mean, due to immigration, due to secularization, there is this cultural tension. Now, the causes of the fire are still under investigation. And they have said they believe it's accidental, but the investigation goes on. I'm going to ask both of you, do you think they may have been too hasty, given, and Father, you know this better than I, given the string of church vandalisms in the last few years, particularly in the last year, you had almost 1,000 since 2016, your thoughts, were authorities too hasty?
It's true that there's Christianophobia, you would say in English, and there are some, of course, but I would say maybe it is more because Catholic people have a hard time in France, like most of the countries in Europe, just to speak loud and clear, and live peacefully with others. But regarding to Notre Dame de Paris, maybe it could, but I don't think so. It's from what it comes up, what the firemen would say, it was maybe because they worked during the day and there was something, you know, you just...
Flammable up in the attic.
Yeah, and I mean, that's bad, but the symbol of it, maybe we have, even though the court is going to get on and the surveys looked what really started this fire, but the symbol is powerful, I would say, and it should help us to say, okay, are we moving back toward Christ by Mary? And we've got to get a thing. It's a church dedicated to Mary.
Yes.
In Catholic Church, Catholic faith, we just go to Christ by Mary.
Yeah, Liz, when I was on Fox the other day, Martha McCullum and I were referring to the church as Our Lady. And I got a lot of notes saying, why do you keep calling this church Our Lady? Well, Notre Dame in French is Our Lady, as Father can attest. Give me a sense, though, were they too quick to say this is accidental as the cause of the fire?
I think at the moment, presuming it's accidental makes perfect sense. My experience, my very limited experience, is only our fire here, which took place in 1823. No, I wasn't there. But in 1823, St. Paul's outside the walls went up in flames in exactly the same circumstances. Their wood beams in the roof caught fire, and it took down. As a matter of fact, the damage looks remarkably similar to that of Notre Dame. The center caved in, but the facade and the apse were intact. So at the moment, I'm just sticking with the only example I know of a situation like this, which was a simple accidental fire caused by something that happened doing work.
Yeah. Liz, now money is already being promised. They've already got, it looks like $1 billion for the restoration. Now, there was a 3D scan of the entire structure done by a late professor at Vassar. What are we talking about in terms of time and effort to restore a church like this, a cathedral of this magnitude and vintage?
People are talking about the numbers are oscillating from a couple years, decades. I really think at the moment there's really not much that one can be sure about. You have to finish assessing the damage. So whether you're going to have to deal with big structural problems from the very bottom, settling the entire building, if you're dealing with the roof, there's so much more that's left to know. It's a gigantic church. What does it hold? 10,000 people. It's 128 meters. I mean, this is a lot of space they've got to cover, and we've just come out of, if you will, the triduum of this tragedy. Monday, we're sitting there, at the foot of the fire, wondering if we're ever going to see the church again. Tuesday, we wait to hear what's been saved, and here we are Wednesday with a great deal of the church is saved. It looks like it's going to be resurrected, but we can't really know how long or what it's all going to involve.
Father, I want to ask each of you this. What are we missing here? What has the coverage, and it's been pretty intense and amazing, frankly, internationally, the coverage of the fire at Notre Dame. What has been missing through both the commentary and coverage to your eye? Father, I'll let you take first crack.
I would say it's hard for me to say because I look a lot of French TV.
Ah, you've been watching the French TV.
Because, we had the first cameras over there and this. But I would say it's one of the points would be the signification of this fire. But what impresses me, and I think we will see it in the weeks to go, is how the French people reacted. And I would think that really what we're just starting to feel is people just adopt, of course, Notre Dame as a building, but more than that, a spiritual center, and even more than that.
As their mother.
Yes, but more Our Lady of Notre Dame. And Virgin Mary is really, she is the first patron of France. And so every French people, I would think, have something in their soul as spiritual part, even though most of the time they are just way out from the Catholic Church or the Catholic faith, which would be another thing. And maybe it can be a good sign, at least in France, but I would say maybe much larger than that. First, for French people to get together, that one's part. And the second thing I noticed is the way all people all around the world just reacting. Pope Francis reacted today to the way Notre Dame is so special in Christianity.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think there's something here that is going to be developed that maybe we're going to see.
And refocus the world's attention on this
Right.
treasure that perhaps people took for granted, even those living in Paris.
Yes.
Yeah. I want to give you last crack at that, Liz. What have we missed this week in the commentary and coverage?
I feel that one of the titles that France has is the eldest daughter of the church. And Notre Dame, as the first really significant monument to be built in the city of Paris that would become the capital of France, that's sitting in the geographical center of the city, that's sitting on top of this moment where the Temple of Jupiter, so that they crushed out the pagan origins, and they bring in this new church in the 12th century. I feel like as we keep discussing, the loss of the beautiful church and, is the spire and this and that, we've lost a sense of the struggle that the eldest daughter of the church has had over her 1700 years or 1500 years of being the first nation to become Christian. That struggle has been long. It's been very, very hard. And the struggle is not, if you think of how many times just in the 19th century, are we secular, are we Christian, are we secular, are we Christian? This is an amazing nation that has fought for faith for so long. We have no idea in the United States. We're children compared to what we've been there. There are older adolescent sisters, and I feel like we should be looking to them, and we should be really supporting them as they once again rediscover this treasure that is the faith, their ancient faith.
Yeah. Father, I'll let you respond.
Well, yeah, and I think the point too, which is very important, that Benedict XVI brought up more and more, as Pope John Paul II already did, is the culture and faith, how the culture brings up faith. And I would say here we touch the way our people are touched by the church and Notre Dame de Paris, which is, when you look at it all around the scene, around is so beautiful, and there's something it brings us. It is the expression of Christian people. It is even the expression of Catholic brains, sort of say.
Yeah.
And I think when you look up to Notre Dame, it brings you simply toward Christ.
Well, I thank you both for your reflections, and I agree. Pope Benedict has written so movingly about the Catholic roots of Europe, urging the European Union and all the countries of Europe to remember and to revivify their Christian and Catholic roots. This is a big reminder, I think, in a not so gentle way, but a big reminder of those roots, what they mean. This church, its beauty didn't come from nothing. It came from faith, it came from belief and struggle, as Liz pointed out. Thank you both. I'm so glad we had you on the program. How Catholic art saved the faith, the triumph and beauty of truth in Counter-Reformation art by Dr. Elizabeth Lev is available everywhere, and we encourage you to get it. Father, thank you for being here. And I want to leave you all with, there were small groups of pilgrims from Paris, young people, who took to the streets this week, singing hymns to Our Lady around the cathedral, and I want to leave you with a moment of that.
Pleine de gloire.